Women's March, Washington, D.C., January 20th, 2017. This president's election devastated my family. So when my daughter suggested we go to the Women's March in Washington, D.C., I said, hell yes. She made the arrangements. She's a history professor. We flew in on the day of the inauguration. TSA didn't search us thoroughly until just before we boarded the flight, and then only some of us. The pilot said to a plane full of women, "You have a Y chromosome, you're feeling outnumbered." We couldn't land during the president's speech. Fortunately, it was a short speech. We took the metro but couldn't get off at the Smithsonian stop. We wanted to visit the African American Museum recently opened. The National Guard was very present, along with giant trucks facing each other to block certain roads. We could go right up to the Washington Monument. We could walk through the World War II Memorial, but the fountains were off. We couldn't get close to the Lincoln Memorial because scaffolding blocked us. They'd had a concert there earlier, and workers were removing the scaffolding. We talked to the park ranger at the Vietnam Memorial, which lists all the names of the fallen. We couldn't get close to the White House. We saw Trump supporters with the red hats. They seemed hostile, glowering. The parade started late. We saw 3 groups of cavalry, one group ridden by women. We walked past all the horse trailers. There were marching bands walking to a beat from one drummer. Huge John Deere tractors grouped together and drove by. By then it was dark, and we had walked 5 miles. Next day we got on the metro. The trains were packed, and we were near the end of the line. It was standing room all the way. We got friendly advice on the city and its money concerns. It only gets funds from Congress directly. A music teacher was right next to us with her daughter. We talked for the hour ride, standing the whole time. The organizers of the Women's March had periodically stationed video screens of the speakers. We heard Gloria Steinem quote the American Psychiatric Association about Trump. His wildly reported symptoms of mental instability, including grandiosity, impulsivity, hypersensitivity to slights or criticisms, and apparent inability to distinguish between fantasy and reality, lead us to question his fitness for the immense responsibilities of the office. People climb trees to hear and see better. We heard Michael Moore. He told us that Las Vegas has odds about how long Trump will last. He told us to call 202-225-3121 and tell our congresspeople what we think. They will direct our calls to our correct congressperson. Ashley Judd's speech was shocking, a poem by a teenager. It was graphic and wondered why tampons and pads are taxed but not Viagra or Rogaine. America Ferrara said, "We will not go from a nation of immigrants to a nation of ignorance," and told us to text women 40649. The organizers made sure we could eat from food trucks. The lines were long. The organizers provided us with porta potties. The lines were long there also. At one point, I lost my daughter. My phone was dead, and I was among 1 million people at a crossroad. I felt so close to panic. I called her name, but everyone was loud. She called me, but nearly every person would answer to the mom call. Finally, we stood on the highest point and found each other. Then we laughed about the lost child scenario. "Have you lost your child? How old is she?" 35. We met up with friends at the Washington Museum. The one was a professor of English at my daughter's school. Her mother flew in from California and is a regular activist. She argued with a cop that prevented us from looking at a display of handmade signs too close to Trump Hotel. She asked for his badge number. He quoted legal code numbers. My favorite sign was, "When you're accustomed to privilege, equality feels like oppression." I looked this up, and it's from Huffington Post's writer Chris Boskel. My favorite poster was the beautiful Muslim woman with a U.S. flag headdress. We saw no arrests or bad behavior. The women were very well informed. Everyone was helpful. Grandmothers in wheelchairs wanted to come with their daughters. We saw lots of dogs and handicapped people. 2 ambulances had to take people away. Anxiety, maybe. Activism is grueling. Going back to the Resident Inn was hard. The metro was full. Long lines led to packed platforms. A metro cop held us back from the escalator to the platform. There was no room. Trains arrived crowded with people, and hardly anyone got off the train, so hardly anyone could get on. People tried to cut in line, but a metro cop corrected this. A remarkable and appreciated sight. I got a seat on a ride because a young woman gave up hers. Then we got to talking, and she needed to get off the train and take another. She was on the wrong train. Everyone was friendly and helpful. Why was this protest important? A lot of women are worried about this administration. Maybe we all voted for his opponent. We experience the warm, fuzzy feeling from belonging to a group. Oxytocin floods the brain. But we have to convince his supporters to change their minds, and I'm doubtful we did that. There's a group called the Indivisibles. They have the strategy for changing the Congress makeup in 2 years. Congressional phone lines are flooded lately, and people are showing up at the offices and homes of Congress people. Unless we can change the proportion of people in political parties in Congress, liberal progressives are endangered. I can't believe we were still fighting for voting rights, reproductive rights, immigrants who want to be included, climate change, and now leaders without conflicts of interest beholden to foreign powers. It makes you want to take a course in political science to understand it all. How did we get here?